Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Nostalgia. I'm very excited to have Perry here with me today. We are going to talk about so many different things. I actually first came across her on TikTok, which I was just obsessed with her video series about the department store. So you're going to have to tell us a little bit about that. But
Absolutely.
essentially, yeah, what I'm really excited for is the fact that your content is something that brings people together, reminds us that we're all part of something greater, and that's ultimately what we aim to do here too. So, giving people a little bit
Yay.
more perspective on the person behind, like, I even just watched your most recent video this morning and I'm audibly laughing out loud to myself. It's the best.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I really want to tug on people's memories and pull out the memories they didn't know they had, resurface some old good times, not even, like bring us back to those moments of simplicity and childhood, youth.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important too, I think, because now when we look back, and I always talk about the difference between nostalgia and nostalgia, the former being like, oh, we have all these great memories, and the latter being like, wait, maybe if it's somebody younger who might have seen your videos and they would
Yeah.
think, oh, wow, like I totally feel like I get it, but maybe they were too young to have experienced it firsthand. And I feel the same way about the 70s and even the 80s because I wasn't
Right.
there the first time around, but the content and the experiences that we have the ability to share now lets us kind of go to that place. And when you were a kid, things were definitely more simple, although I feel like we didn't think so in the time. It was like we were just living life.
Right. Yeah, I think I don't know. We come from a generation of like we grew up with the internet, right? So I do think that there is some merit to understanding how drastic that shift is, where we go from just being so present, so in the moment, not having any distractions. Our like the biggest distraction we had was TV and like watching cartoons on a Saturday morning. We're renting the same movie from Blockbuster and watching it over and over again. And like our parents were concerned about that. And then you dip into the internet and it's like this massive cultural shift that the kids today wouldn't know a difference. We got to see that in action in our teenage years, in our pivotal years. And I think that absolutely plays a part. I mean, we have these. I like what you said about like nostalgia versus nostalgia. I think that we have like a different vantage point than a lot of people.
Yeah, and when it comes to the cultural zeitgeist, it's like it's always just a snapshot of whatever's going on in the time, and that means that you have to have context with whatever else is going on in the world, whether it's socio-politically or just how it feels to be living in that moment. And what's so
Right.
interesting at looking back at the past is that you can glamorize it, you can kind of put it up on a pedestal, you can cherry pick certain things that you liked from that time and kind of disregard maybe the not so savory parts. But at the same time, I do like just in looking at the past from a contemporary lens, still being like, okay, maybe those things that happened back then, there were some things that we would either find problematic or
Mhm.
we're just uninterested in now. But I do think that there's a great opportunity to at least be able to say, like, okay, you look at the past and you learn from it, and in the present you create and
Yeah.
you put whatever you want to be out in the world, and that's how we're all kind of like co-creating and shaping this future.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. And I think that it's cool that we're all, I don't know, that's one of the great things about the internet. We're all able to do that together and learn and bring light to it. And not only just light, like in terms of bringing issues to light, but bring a lightheartedness to the like troubling past that we may have had, even on the internet or just in general, and just kind of like help each other recover and laugh and I don't know, move forward. I think that laughter is I think it's important. I think it is like the answer. I love Bo Burnham and I feel like he always this is like the theme of his comedy, is just that like laughter is the answer to everything. But I really believe that. I think it heals and it brings us all together. So
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And like I already mentioned, your videos make me laugh so hard. Where did you come up with the idea for the department stores?
okay, so it's a lot of my videos are just like, as most art, right? It's based on your experience. So art, it's literally my eyes and mouth over a department store, but I mean, it's my art. I love the mall. I hate that I love it, but I do. I just, it's like from the time I was little, I love all of the smells. I love that you can walk past like a Tivana and then a Yankee Candle, and then you get the candles, you get the tea, and then the Forever 21 with like that fresh retail is in the corner. And I love the sensory experience of a mall. So I find myself at the mall a lot, even when I'm broke. I just love to walk around. Like I always joke that if I'm ever pregnant and about to go into labor and I need to just go do some cardio, I'm just gonna go walk around the mall until I start having contractions. So I was in the mall recently, Century City specifically, which a lot of people point out that this is where my fronts are from, and it is because that's the mall closest to me. And I was walking past a Macy's, and I grew up in a Macy's. My dad actually worked for Macy's all throughout my childhood, so like I would grow up in the back of a Macy's, just like playing with puzzles, and the Macy's Day Parade was huge in my house. Like weirdly, we were a Macy's family, which is just odd thinking back now. I never even put that together. But I walked past this Macy's one day and I thought, Macy's, like, okay, I'm over Macy's. I'm a Nordstrom girl now. And then I realized, what is going on? Like, how am I turning my nose up at Macy's right now? That's so ridiculous. And also, I cannot afford Nordstrom or Bloomingdale's. Like, and also, aren't I trying to, reduce my carbon footprint? Like, what am I doing? Shopping in these stores anyways. And I just thought it was so funny how there's this snooty attitude towards, when you get into this like upper middle class culture, there's like this, just, I don't know, this weird attitude towards different department stores, which is just so it's just so American too. And I just found it so funny that I found myself falling into that mindset, even though I don't fall into that, like, uh, you know, that bracket of people. I don't know. Yeah, it just made me laugh. And I just was like, okay, let me give them characters and kind of break it down in a funny way for something that is just so peculiar and transient. And, like I just thought, okay, I'm going to give them personalities now. Let's do it.
Yeah, that is so fun. It actually reminds me, there's a journalist. She worked at Rolling Stone and her name is Jancy Dunn, and her family was a JCPenney family. And so her name, Jancy, is like a combination of JC or something like that. And I'm like,
No
that is
way. They're
serious
dedicated.
dedication.
I
And
love it. I'm really happy for them.
yeah, I'm so happy for them. And I used to work in retail as well, and I had a career in the fashion industry. So I've spent probably at least a good 20% of my life in, at, around the
The
mall.
mall.
And yeah, it has such a culture in and of itself.
Right.
What was your favorite store in the mall growing up?
Okay. When I was younger, I loved a Hot Topic. Um, that was just like I had to venture into the Hot Topic at one point in my time. My grandma would let me and my cousin just like wander around, and that was always the time where we could go to Hot Topic. We could go to Spencer's. So I loved being able to go in there. I also really loved this store called Deb. I don't know if you
Yeah,
remember Deb. Do you remember Deb?
I know
Okay,
Deb.
yeah,
Yep, I
that was
had
like where I
one.
could go and get like affordable accessories. So, I
Mhm.
only had $5 on me at all times. So it's like I'm not going to go in Hot Topic and find myself anything. They were overpriced even then.
Yeah, it's so funny. I actually just went there the other day because I ordered a Spice Girls t-shirt and did buy online, pick up in store. So I go, like, going back into Hot Topic in, your hometown mall, it's an experience.
Yeah.
And I'm looking around and it's exactly the same. Like everything is exactly the same, except you look up and all of the graphic tees, the displays are all bands mostly now from our lifetime
Right.
versus in high school, I would get Queen and the Beatles and all different kinds of t-shirts from Hot Topic, but literally like all the fixtures, all the branding, everything. It's kind of like a time machine almost. And I went in there and Taking Back Sunday starts playing and I have a visceral reaction. I'm like, "Oh my god." And I look around, but it's like I'm the only person who, well, I'm assuming knows, but at least I was the only
Yeah.
person who was like gasping at the song. And it's not like I don't listen to I have a Spotify playlist called To 2005 and Beyond
Okay,
because
I'm gonna go find this
it
right
was
now.
just a good time.
That's
And
amazing.
it has all like the Hot Topic-esque songs. And I don't know, it's just like such a feel good moment for
Yeah,
me. I
yeah.
love that.
Well, they know too, right? They
Yeah.
were the one they were playing the song, so they knew. They're like, you know what? We're here for our day ones.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that's what's tricky too is that since a lot of people who maybe came of age in the 2000s or the 2010s, it's like they're kind of grappling with this sense of adulthood and they're really into the nostalgia because what was more simpler than a time before you had to pay taxes or pay rent or
Yeah,
have kind of like this sense of responsibility.
right.
And so, yeah, I think it's really interesting because whenever I go into a situation like that, it's like I don't feel old. I feel like that's a sentiment I hear every so often, like, "Oh my God, we're so old." And it's like,
Yeah, no.
no, these places are still built for us. They're playing our
Right.
music and whatever. So I'm like, I am happy if anybody else wants to join in on the fun because it just
Yeah.
still brings up such happy feelings for me.
Right. I think that is what it I was thinking about the same thing yesterday about how there was such a bliss in childhood, just partially because adulthood does bring a lot of responsibility with it, like paying bills and da da da. But also, it's this time where you're, especially puberty. Like, I have a playlist. Speaking of playlists, I have a playlist called just puberty. I should probably think of something more creative. But it's like all of that same, it's that same music of just like, it was just gutting me at the time, heartbreak and just, longing for something I didn't know what it was. And it's all of this music, like All Time Low and From First to Last. And it's like when I was really trying to lean into that scene kid mentality of like, I thought these were really, I mean, these were hard hitting, pressing issues in my life of just like, who am I? you know? And they're
Mhm.
still valid, even though now my issues are a lot more grounded in like, how am I going to pay rent? Kind of thing. But yeah, it's nice sometimes to travel back to that sort of heartache and remember how vivid and real it was at the time. I love indulging in sadness. That's a big thing for me.
Yeah. How do you feel about these artists getting on TikTok nowadays? Are you like, that's cool that All Time Low and Taking Back Sunday have TikTok accounts? Or are you like, I like their music, but I don't necessarily see that they need to have a presence here?
I do think I feel mixed emotions because of course they're still artists, they're still creating, they're still trying to like do what they love. And then part of me is like, yeah, but I want you to stay where you were at your peak, or whatever I'm projecting onto them was their peak, which, in reality it kind of was. But I don't know. Yeah, I feel weird about it. Sometimes I love when I see someone pop up from my youth, and I'm like, oh, I love that you're here. Like Shania Twain, I love that you're here. Like, thank you. Please continue. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I feel mixed emotions about it. I think it's great that they're circling back to the present moment, and that kids today are like, oh, who's this? Or maybe they know. Like whenever I was young, I really tried to pride myself in knowing about music and just pop cultural moments from before I was born. So I know that like I don't know, there was something really cool about knowing something you shouldn't know, or like knowing something super underground. So at least for me, I really tried to know uh I tried to know about what preceded me so that I could be cooler.
Did you know that we have a weekly newsletter, Nostalgia.substack.com? We have a roundup of pop culture news, playlists, trivia, all kinds of fun stuff. Paid subscribers, it's $5.99 a month. Get bonus mini podcast episodes where you have the opportunity to pick the topic. So we will see you there. Nostalgia.substack.com. Back to the show. Okay, Perry. So you had mentioned Hot Topic and Spencer's as two stores that you loved, and we talked a little bit about Happy Bunny. I just feel like this was a bit of a memory that got unlocked for me because I didn't have any Happy Bunny things myself. But can you kind of like explain the resonance of this culture and how graphic tees, especially these ones with these little bunnies on them, were just made into merchandise of all kinds, and they were just very important to people.
Yeah, so I think, it's really this childhood introduction to like really absurd humor that maybe wasn't super prevalent at the time. And you have this literally just this happy little bunny that is so cute and squishy. And then it's just paired with phrases like, um, I don't even know. I can picture the bunny, but I'm like, it said the most absurd things like, I hope your family dies or something, like just like, hey, you're ugly, and just this happy little bunny. And it was just like, I remember my mom hated it. She was like, that's crazy. Why would you send that message? And I'm like, Mom, it's comedy. Okay. It's funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Some just textures that I associate with Happy Bunny are like those really squishy spikes that would come
Mm-hmm.
on bracelets and earrings. I love those. The studded belts, which have made a comeback in their own right. Maybe a pair of suspenders with your Happy Bunny graphic tee. Maybe a pair of like no lens big frame glasses. I don't know. That's the aesthetic around Happy Bunny, and
I
just a
love that
general
so
attitude of
much.
like I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, it was very irreverent. And I think that when you're a kid or a teenager or someone who's like, you, right, you have kind of this angst toward life and you don't really know how to channel it. And okay, now there's a t shirt. And I think that this kind of sarcastic humor, my humor is definitely more of a satire than sarcasm, but I would say that for an entire generation, sarcasm was really the like the mark of
That was it.
comedy. Like that was just
Yeah.
it. And so yeah, I think even the remember those books like the All My Friends Are Dead books? And it
Oh my
had
gosh,
like
I
this,
know.
yeah, and it had this dinosaur on the cover. This one was, I don't know when it came out, like definitely not in the 2000s. I think it was some point in the 2010s, but like it was one of those books that you would find at Urban Outfitters where it's
Okay,
supposed
right.
to be funny and trendy. And yeah, and the idea was like that it was a dinosaur because dinosaurs are now extinct, so their friends are not here anymore. Um, but like that,
Dinosaurs were
right.
huge too, though. Like
It,
dinosaurs, for whatever reason, it's like specifically the green long neck dinosaur just had
that
a
yes, that
bone.
was the one on the cover of the book. I don't want to misname the dinosaur as I have no idea the difference between the dinosaurs, but
Right. I just said long neck, and I'm sure I don't even know. Like, part of me is like, yeah, that's totally scientifically accurate, but I have no idea.
yeah, that's so funny. Okay, so we were both emos and I can you I'm trying to something that I haven't quite figured out how to articulate yet is the difference, if you were describing it to someone who wasn't there, the difference between emo culture and scene culture.
Right.
Like it's
Okay.
because if you were there, you clearly get
You
the
knew.
difference between the two,
Right.
but now I feel like it's so hard to pinpoint.
Okay. I'm going to get even more niche. And so if anyone can relate, please let me know because I I spent a portion of my youth in Florida. Like, pray for me. I'm still recovering. But I in Florida, where I was at in Florida, the cool kids were seen skateboarding like that. The athletes were just maybe like tier 3, even they weren't even tier 2, they weren't the cool kids. So I, being an aspiring cool kid, was like, okay, I'm gonna lean into scene culture, because I feel like the scene kids were just, I don't even want to describe it as like a milder version of being emo, because it's almost different. Like at the time, emo was leaning more towards goth, not quite there, still goth. I think if I were to say that, people who are like truly goth would be like, that is not accurate. But I think that there was a darker tone to it. There was a heavier, just there was a heavier mood to wanting to be emo. And then with scene culture, it was a little bit more like leaning towards, is it tweed? Is that what people are calling like the tweed, right? Or is that a
Twee.
fabric?
Tweed,
Tweed.
T
Tweed.
W E E D, is a fabric, and
Okay.
TWEE is the Zoe Deschanel Manic Pixie
Right.
Dream Girl vibe.
Right, right. So yeah, you have twee, which is still again different from scene, and I don't even know if I can put them on a spectrum like I'm doing, but I do believe scene was a little bit more in between. Like to me, scene was, you still had those bangs and the short hair and the like crazy makeup, but maybe there was a little bit more color sprinkled in. There was a little bit more like, you had the like checkered Vans, and obviously the skinny jeans and the like pants that went almost down to your crotch. Like, why were we doing that? Yeah, I don't know. I think it was somewhere in between. It wasn't quite emo, but there was that subtle difference. And for me, I really wanted to be seen, and I still don't really fully know what that means. I was just really trying to, and for me, I was trying to impress boys that I perceived as seen. So it was
Yeah.
purely to gain. I had a goal.
Yeah, there was an end goal in mind. Yeah, I almost think of it on like a time spectrum, because I think where it got tricky for me was when I would hear people talking about scene, they would be talking about the early 2010s. And I remember seeing kind of branching off. I just remember it from earlier in the, I guess, mid to late 2000s. So I think of it as like you have punk rock, and that kind of evolved into emo in the
Right.
early to mid 2000s. Then 2005, emo takeover, and then maybe once 2007 8 started to come around, you saw more of the scene. And I think I always thought that scene was more like, hmm scene was like the precursor and the bridge between mid 2000s emo and early 2010s indie sleaze, which is twee adjacent. And
Yes.
yeah, because, and I think it was an interesting time too, where it's like, I mentioned this last week, where like the 2000s, it was almost like the beginning and the end were two different decades. There's so much nuance and there's so many differences between them. But I
Right.
think also for me, like I was in college in the 2010s. And so I feel like when I think of scene, I think of kind of like the high school kids who weren't straight edge, whereas some of the emo kids were straight edge. They didn't, meaning, if that still has the same meaning now, they didn't drink, they didn't smoke, they didn't do drugs, whatever.
Mhm.
And, but they were still like living at their parents' house, or like there was still this kind of like arrested development situation going on. And then as indie sleaze developed, it was like that's when I was old enough to go to bars or this or that. And so kind of the culture around it, I don't know, it evolved with age a little,
Mhm.
which I think is super interesting, because even when you have siblings who are a few years apart from you, like
Right.
that's an experience that I have with the culture. Whereas I have a sister who's 3 years younger. She definitely would have had a different experience there.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think I mean, can I ask how old you are?
Yes, I'm 32. I was born in 1990.
Okay, perfect. So I'm 27. I was born in 94. So I think I hear what you're saying about that, like that subtle difference of like age based on where you were at in the 2000s and what you were experiencing. So like for me, I
Hmm.
was in middle school, and that was the like very pivotal years. I was in middle school from 2006 to 2008, and that was when I was really like indulging and diving into this um you know, scene culture, emo culture, this sort of music that I was trying to like learn and hear things that weren't mainstream and trying really hard to fight against the mainstream. That was kind of like where I was at the time, just prepubescent or like right in that puberty time frame.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this interesting kind of phenomenon that I'm going to call pink punk or like Barbie emo, where you can present as someone who wears Abercrombie or Hollister, or in my case, Delia's. And I mean, if you were a Delia's girl, though, that was definitely there's a Delia's um, to Manic Pixie Dream Girl pipeline for sure. But it was, you know, you could be somebody who presents as someone who is kind of along with the status quo or the mainstream, but then also, you know, have your friends be the skateboarders and the musicians, and you fitting into that kind of crowd as well without having to fully commit to whether that's emo or goth culture. Because and we talk about this all the time on the podcast, but like with the monoculture, it's the end of us all reading the same magazines, us all listening to the same music, culture starting to fracture a little bit with the advent of the internet and later with social media. And so, whereas if you were goth in the 90s, like that was your complete identity, it's nothing like how it is now, where people essentially cosplay different aesthetics for whenever they feel like it. They can go buy a Renaissance dress on
Right.
Amazon one day and be cottage core the next. And I think that for people who are young now or teenagers now, it can be really comforting to explore, to try to find your identity that way. But I think when we were younger, it was much more about like, okay, what box are you going to fit into? Like, who are you going to be? And you like kind of can't change your mind about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you think about being a pink punk? Because it's like we could really go either way and get to still be our true selves and our full selves and our authentic selves while yeah, not necessarily committing to this one. I mean, they were still kind of clicks at the time without committing to that
Yeah.
one click.
Yeah, I think at the time I was very upset that I felt that there were inconsistencies in my style and what I was trying to uh, portray myself as. And then I felt like a fraud because if I ever had a glitch in my little system I was creating, I thought, oh, well, they're going to see that I don't really know what I'm talking about. Like my crush, his name was Temmie, but everyone called him Frodo. And he had like a Ninja Turtle backpack and these like pants hanging off. His boxers were out. He's got his like little checkered Vans and his, you know, he just like his long hair. And I just thought he was a dream. And I really thought like if he can see right through me, I'm going to be crushed because I was partially creating this thing. I was both, you know, I was like really wanted to dive into this scene crowd, but I was also just like, I mean, I was a Britney fangirl from the jump. Like I loved pop and I loved um like bubblegum. I was like that was partially me too. So I really spent so much time throughout my youth trying to figure out, okay, how do I be both and not be a fraud? And I think that I see it in my own style and the reflection of who I am now. Like I have blended it so well and I do love that the pop culture now especially encourages like just doing it all. And again, with the popularization a bit of cosplay, I think you see people more leaning into this idea that you can do literally whatever you want. Like you can try out whatever you want. And especially in LA, a place like LA, one of its really redeeming qualities is that you can go out onto the street looking insane and trying out an entirely new look and no one's going to think twice. And if I did that in my small town in North Carolina, people would be like, she's going to Target like that. Why? You know? So I think I've seen a blend of all of my interests is reflect in my style and my music taste now, and I'm a lot more comfortable with allowing myself to be both. Um, yeah, it's just interesting that we put ourselves into boxes so much at that time.
That is so true. And I really want to take some time to talk about how Britney Spears has impacted your life because I mean, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, she was huge. She was my first concert and I was in kindergarten at the time. I think it was like 1999 or something like that. So she was right at the her point where she was like coming out from opening for NSYNC and she was on her own. I mean, that was like right after Hit Me Baby One More Time, and so I just was so enamored. I loved her so much, and I remember at the time I we had like the back of general admission, so we were basically up against a wall, and I was like 4 feet at the time, so I couldn't see anything. And but I still like I felt like I had bragging rights going into kindergarten the next day. I adored her. I loved Crossroads. I rented it over and over and over again. I would be rewinding that VHS and just watching it on repeat. I had a karaoke machine with like exclusively her CD karaoke tracks. I don't know. I felt very connected to her. I felt like I knew her and she was so down to earth, even watching her little interviews, or she has documentaries from the late 90s where she's just starting out, and then watching her evolution in a way was just really disheartening for me because um, I don't know. I think everyone who's a Britney fan is a Britney fan, but I think that there's a distinct difference of those who like came in maybe 2007 and didn't really grow up with her throughout her youth as well. Um, I don't know. There's a difference there because although I still adore her, I think it's just um, I don't know. There was a shift where I didn't listen to her as much personally. I think there was a huge shift in her music. Obviously, that partially because she wasn't necessarily in charge of everything anymore. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of like my Britney journey. I still adore her. I love your shirt. I almost wore my Britney shirt today too. I should
I
have.
wore my Britney shirt
I love it.
for
It
you
looks amazing.
today. Thank
I'm so
you.
happy. Yeah, I saw that. I love it.
Yeah, she's the best. And I definitely agree with, like, I truly can't imagine not being alive or having a firsthand experience of like hearing Toxic for the first time. Like, I genuinely can't and don't want to imagine
Oh,
what
I just got
life would be
chills.
like.
I love
Seriously. And yeah, I feel the same way. And I've actually seen Britney in concert once. It was for the circus tour,
it. Okay.
and I literally me and my sister were in the last row. So our backs were up against the wall. And, but I still had a blast. And I even remember talking about this recently where it's like, yes, the internet existed. Like that tour was in May 2009. And so it's like, we had the internet back then, but it was like the way that information was disseminated was so different than it is now. So as much as it's easy to be like, well, couldn't you have looked up online or something? It's like, no, we didn't function like that at the time. And so what I remember talking to my sister about was being like, oh my God, we saw her concert when she was in the conservatorship. And it even being that long ago, 2009. I mean, at this
Right,
point, that
because
is
that was when
13
she had
years
that, like,
ago.
viral show, right? Where she seemed very off and everybody was, of course, like, totally antagonizing her. Well, that was that year,
Yeah.
right?
Well, there was this guy who ran up on stage like during one of the numbers. I don't know how he got past security or the backup dancers, and like dancers had to restrain him. And at the time the reaction was kind of like, "Oh my god. Wow, like crazy, like a crazy dude." He was just some like young guy at a Britney Spears concert. He wasn't particularly dangerous or anything, but in the video, you look at her and see her visibly jump. And I think that's the most disturbing thing about it is that here's this woman who was constantly harassed and stalked and made a complete fool you know,
Right.
like her whole brand, I mean, the whole kind of image around her really disintegrated, you know, in 2007.
Mm,
And she's had to deal with the fallout ever since. And I think
yeah.
that because she was, I would say, of our generation, the first performer who really had a personal brand, seeing
Yeah.
that unravel was a little bit disheartening for us. And I remember
Totally.
even thinking how when she was with Kevin Federline, people were like, oh, why is she with him? You know, she dresses this way now, she
Oh yeah.
talks this way now. And it's like, girl's from Louisiana. She was always like that. It was her
Right.
meticulously crafted personal brand, which we didn't say things like that back then. That was just the image of Britney Spears, but you don't know the real human. And if anything, you know, that partner that she had made her confident or secure to some extent in her own skin, which is something that she's been repeatedly not allowed to do.
No, 100%. And I think when, especially when you come from a really rural southern area and then you come to LA, like, I mean, I'm from North Carolina, so that's even different than Louisiana, but like to come out here and to be like the spotlight be so on you and you keep it together for so many years and then you get to this point where you're like, I just want to be myself. Like I was watching clips from her from the Mickey Mouse Club, having them come and this is what I do, you know, on an average Saturday, and she's just like, you know, four-wheeling around her backyard, and that's her life. And then you come out here and everyone's like, this is the way you do things. What are you doing? You know, I mean, even something as crazy, obviously, as having her baby in her lap driving in the car. Like, maybe there was more information on where she was going, how far she was going, but like, and again, I don't condone this, but it's like something that you would do in a really rural area. Like, I'm gonna back the car out of the driveway, like, and you have your baby with you, you know? I mean, just something that like you wouldn't think about. And again, I'm not saying it's something you shouldn't think about, like you absolutely should, but when everyone's watching you, it blows up and it takes over your whole life. Now that's a hallmark of her existence, is having that baby on her lap in the front seat, even if she was just moving the car or whatever. That's crazy. That will follow you forever. Now everyone has that associated with you in their brain, that you're not all there. You like, why would you do that? And that's just, I can't imagine. Even if that one incident happened to me, I think it would really mess with me, you know? And that's like just one of hundreds of ways that she's been scrutinized in the public eye, and just it will always follow her. And I think that's really horrible and sad. I think it's, I don't know, it's just tragic, you know? I mean, it's not all tragedy. I'm really happy that, like, I saw a video of her the other day using her real, like, her singing voice, her like deep,
Mm-hmm.
um really really rich singing voice, and I was really happy to hear that, like hear her sound like herself. I don't know, it makes me really happy.
Yeah, I heard too that back in the day, the song Umbrella by Rihanna was supposed to be for Britney, but then
Really?
the umbrella paparazzi incident where she like beat a paparazzo with an umbrella came out. And I was like, wow, I think that song was written before that incident, but still, like, this is sick. And yeah, I was happy to hear her in her real voice. My favorite Britney Spears meme or whatever video is when she's singing. I don't know if it was on Star Search or on something, but she sings and she just sings I Don't Care, like absolutely belting it. And I'm like, that is my forever energy, is just Britney, you know, 10-year-old Britney Spears singing I
Right.
Don't Care. I'm like, that's amazing.
Oh yeah, I really, you know, she was pivotal. She was pivotal, and she was so herself. And I think obviously the way that she, I don't know, this is what I do in my spare time. I just look up to see if I can find any more interviews that I haven't seen of her, like just progression throughout time. Justin Timberlake interviews of the time. I know he's getting so much backlash years later for everything that happened with them, but I'm like, oh my gosh, this is insane how much we let fly. How much, like, Diane Sawyer, what are you doing? What are you
Hmm.
doing? Like, why are we letting all of this? You're literally terrorizing like a 20, 21-year-old girl why was this? I mean, it would never happen now. You know, I mean, I never want to say never. Some crazy things still go very under the radar even now, but that's just wild to me that we just accepted that and completely demonized this young woman. And every like tabloid, every media outlet was just out to get her. It's insane.
Yeah, I think that the lesson to be learned here is that despite the fact that you can, especially with the internet, be mean, say whatever you want, to choose kindness and to choose empathy over everything else, even empathy for celebrities, because a lot of people are haters and they'll be like, it's literally the song Lucky. They'll be like, oh, but she has so
Yeah.
much money, or but she's so famous. And it's like, there is no condition where like harassing people is acceptable or
Yeah.
where they deserve any kind of mistreatment that they might get despite their wealth or
Yeah.
their unusual circumstance. And I don't know, that's why I'm not obsessed with celebrities. I'm obsessed with the fact that there are people that all make us feel like we have a connection. And so I think
Right.
she's somebody who really does that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I agree. It's helpful too to like take the emphasis off of her and put it more on her work, because when we start to idolize people, no one can handle that. Imagine what it would be like if you woke up tomorrow and everyone knew your name but no one knew you, but thought that they knew you. That's not good. That's not healthy. Like that's a problem that we have as a society. We have to look at what people are doing and less on them, because we don't. I will never know Britney. I do feel like I do. I'm also like susceptible to this idea that I know her. I know, but I really know her. Like I knew her first. You know, I mean, I don't. I have
Hmm.
no idea who she is. I don't know her in and out everyday life. I don't know how she likes her coffee. Like I don't know how she likes her eggs. I don't know her. So yeah, I think what you're saying is great. How do these artists bring people together, and what is their work? And let's start there instead of trying to project onto them all of our ideas about their identity. We just don't know them. Like that's just it.
Yeah, that's so true. And as they say on MTV's Diary, you think you know, but you have no idea.
You have no idea.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yes. Well, Perry, thank you so, so much for being here with me today. I had so much fun.
Me too. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course. And thank you guys so much for listening. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Did you like this episode? Do you like this podcast? Well, thanks. Make sure to like, follow, share, rate, review on whatever platform you're accessing this from. And again, I super, super appreciate your support. If you love pop culture of the past, present, and future, connect with me on social media at Nicole Tremalio on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. That's NicoleTremalio. And are you subscribed to our weekly newsletter on all things digital, internet, and pop culture? You have to head to nixtalgia.substack.com. We have a roundup of pop culture news, book club, trivia, all kinds of fun stuff. You're going to love it. And as a reminder, paid subscribers get bonus episodes where you have the opportunity to pick the future topic. That's so fun. It's nixtalgia.substack.com. Thanks again for listening to the podcast, and I'll see you next week. Bye.